Is this better? Yeah. Well, so, hi.
Hi.
I'm here. I spent the last 3 weeks on Maui, and when Pastor Sarah asked me to preach today, I kind of, like, at first I said, yeah, I don't know if I'm going to be around. Let me get back to you. And then actually planned my return so I could be with you for a couple of reasons. Um, I am just about to embark on a new partnership journey with Parkview Church, which is very special given our past. Um, it just feels like coming full circle. And I wanted to be here, and thank you. Receiving some blank looks. Is everybody familiar with the plan? No? Okay. It's not a secret. Okay, I get to tell you. So, uh, uh, most of you know that I had been doing new worshiping community work, which is like a new expression of ministry. And I had been doing that with yoga along with my ministry at my last church. This year, I decided to just go full time doing new ministry initiative, and I have been really passionate about bringing trauma studies and spirituality and yoga together. In my mind, they've always been connected, and I see more and more need for what I like to call embodied spirituality. Uh, Society, and especially in the Presbyterian Church, we tend to be like so much up in the head, and I'm a believer that we carry so much in our bodies, and we heal and we find lightness and more connection to God through our bodies. And so I proposed this idea to the presbytery, and then Parkview Church has agreed to host this ministry. So I'm very excited that in just a couple of days, I'm going to be back here. So, I'm calling this my church again. Woo! Another important reason is that today, December 29th, marks the anniversary of my arrival in Sacramento and at Parkview 7 years ago. Yeah. No, thank you. So it felt just very symbolic to be here and to celebrate the past together and hope for the future. Um, and I really wanted to say that what Parkview has done for me has been truly exceptional since 2017 and until now. After calling me to the residency program, this church was willing to go through the legal process of petitioning for my visa in 2016 at a time when politics were a bit hard, and you don't know what a gift that was. You just allowed me the opportunity to start a new career, but also a new life that would have never been possible for me back home. And in light with the latest political situation in Lebanon, this takes a whole other level of meaning for me. And it doesn't stop there. You guys gave me a community and a family. Art was a very valuable mentor and friend. Pastor Sarah has been my liaison with the presbytery in this past year, and she's been also a friend and an advocate. So I'm just so grateful for Parkview's continuous support, past and future. And I'm honored to be standing here on this day, 7 years after that first time I stood here in front of you, then a group of friendly strangers that I now proudly call my family. So thank you. It's been quite the journey, hasn't it? Yeah, so here we're coming into a new year together. Uh, any New Year's resolutions? Anyone? You have any? No? What? I have a few. So, like, what's the deal? You reach an age where you stop doing that, or not calling you old? No New Year's resolutions? Anybody? Let's hear it. Oh, Donna. Mm, mm. Amen. Thank you for sharing that. Anyone else? Well, I'll share mine. I'm becoming vegan, y'all. My people are gonna disown me. It's just yeah, I have some health and diet plans for the New Year's. I kind of want to become healthier. This past year has been a little chaotic, so that's my New Year's resolution. I was just thinking, how cool would it be if as a church we can have a New Year's resolution? So maybe let's be thinking about that. So today I chose a text that's John's version of the Christmas story because it highlights the embodiment of the birth of Jesus like no other evangelist does. So here's the text. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. That was with God in the beginning. Through the Word all things were made. Without it nothing was made that has been made. In the Word was life, and that life was the light of all humankind. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. The true light that gives light to everyone was coming into the world. The light was in the world, and through the world was made, and though the world was made through the light, the world did not recognize the light. It came to that which was its own, but its own did not receive it. Yet to all who did receive the light, to those who believed in its name, it gave the right to become children of God. And the Word became flesh and lived among us, and we have seen its glory, the glory of a parent's only child, full of grace, full of truth. Amen. In the opening of their Gospels, while the other evangelists get busy trying to cushion Jesus' birth with like a solid lineage of Hebrew patriarchs, John doesn't really seem to need any of that. His opening words are perhaps one of the most beautiful and profound Christian poetry that we have, and also one of my most beloved scriptures. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. So the author of the fourth gospel boldly and unapologetically begins his gospel by asserting that Jesus is the Word, the Logos, the divine creative wisdom, the true light that enlightens everyone. And Jesus is not alone in this Word made flesh business, but all those who believe in him have been given the power to do what Jesus did. That's just the beginning. The theological appeal of John's prologue can be summarized with one argument. Here it is. In the beginning, when the earth was formed from void, God has been working on behalf of humankind. And as God enters the world, humankind is invited to work on behalf of God. That's embodied faith right there. This is what we believe the church to be about, right? A community of believers called to work in the world on behalf of God. We hope that's the case. In the past year, I've been deeply challenged by the ways that the church institution has prioritized survival over the mission of Christ. After the war started in Gaza and extended to Lebanon, I realized that I was a part of an institution that has more voices endorsing than voices opposing the war on those who look like me. And that has caused me a lot of trouble and like cognitive dissonance at first. It eventually led me to leave my last congregation and take a year off to discern my future. So I have been pondering a lot in this last year. It's been exactly a year since I left, about what it means to be a Christian and what it means to be a Christian church in a world that is drowning in apathy. And that has actually changed the direction of my ministry and my whole understanding of my calling. I used to view God's calling as something external, a task, a ministry, a job to do. But in the past year, I've come to see that God's first call is to our own well-being. I learned that fulfillment and growth are not selfish pursuits, but they are holy work. This realization brings me back to the opening of John's Gospel, which reminds us that God's creative power is not static, it's ongoing, it's dynamic and participatory. The Word became flesh not just as an event to observe or celebrate, but as an invitation to embody. And embodiment means connection with our own bodies. In fact, I feel like I lost connection with God when I lost connection to my body after I just burnt out doing God's work. Some considerations to make. I learned that one can only be in alignment with God when we are in alignment, in full alignment with ourselves. And at the risk of sounding cliche, I want to say in body, mind, and spirit. In my experience, these three components, they work together. You cannot be in connection with one without being in connection to the other. If the Word became flesh to dwell among us, then our humanity, our struggles, our joys, and even our trauma is not a barrier to God's presence, but a vessel for it. So to truly embody the Word, I think the church needs to create space for these experiences that we all share as humans in the body and in the mind. And that's why I'm creating the community that I'm creating, because these embodied elements have always felt missing for me in the church. And when I say the church, I'm talking about the church institution. Just to be clear, I'm not checking one single congregation. Jesus says in John 10:10, I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. That abundance is about learning to nurture our bodies, to be health conscious, to get rest when we need it, to sustain our mental and psychological health, admit when we need help, live and move in ways that are conducive to our healing, and prioritize healing and wholeness over societal mandates. And by that, I believe we honor the spiritual journeys that God has placed us on. This is the mind, body, spirit connection that I see and I've come to experience. Reflecting on our shared journey, I'm reminded of how this congregation has always embodied the Word through action. I mentioned earlier that you have supported my beginning. You also did the same with 3 other residents. And that's just one example about, among many others. And I wanted to actually give you an update on each of my colleagues. Chelsea has recently moved to Vermont with Pegasus and their 2 girls. And just 2 Sundays ago, she got installed at her newest church, Good Shepherd Lutheran Church. I joked with her that this is a sneaky way to be Catholic in the UCC church. She loves the Lutherans. And you know what she actually said? She said, I love the Lutherans. They're more embodied than the UCC. I was like, yes. Check the embodied word for me. Veronica is also, she's living in Loveland, Colorado with Greg, and she's serving at Lutheran church. And they're actually going to get married here in this church this coming spring. And I heard from Art that Chakrita is starting a new job in Texas as a Bible translator with the Bible League International. And I know that, like me, every single one of them is very grateful for our small beginnings here at Parkview, from which we grew into our current callings and unique callings. All right, I feel a lot better. Where were we? Talking about growth. And yeah, as important as our personal growth is, John's gospel reminds us that God's calling is always bigger than ourselves. Uh, John actually goes further and deeper and wider than all the other evangelists who try to link Jesus with his faith ancestors like Abraham and John the Baptist and even Adam, as seen consecutively in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. What John does is he roots Jesus not just in the story of humanity or the Hebrew people or that specific little net, but in the very origins of creation. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God. Just spreads the net really wide. Too often we tend to limit God's work to what happens within set bounds of geography, of tradition, of order, of church building, etc. Forgetting that Jesus didn't spend much time in synagogues and temples. Most of his time was in the streets, um, in boats, on mountaintops, with marginalized, with the outcast, with the hurting, in foreign towns. Uh, he was an itinerant preacher, right? He didn't wait for people to come. He went to them. And that finally brings me to authenticity. That's one of the lessons I learned this year. If the incarnation teaches us anything, it is that God meets us where we are as we are. The Word became flesh in the raw, unpolished, and ordinary human experience. And in my discernment this past year, I've realized that authenticity is not just a virtue, it's a spiritual practice, and a hard one. To be the Word made flesh in the world requires us to live from a place of integrity, to be honest about our struggles and our hopes, and to align our actions with our deepest values. Um, and I think that one of the greatest challenges that face the church today, which is also similar to the challenge that faces every human being, is the conditioning that holds us back from being the most authentic versions of ourselves. Um, in the psychology world, they say that they talk about how, as little kids, we trade authenticity for belonging because our survival depends on belonging. Um, and I think, likewise, the church too often makes that trade. The church as an institution hides behind professionalism. I get that a lot in my previous church because we needed to be always like decent and in order and professional. Institutions hide behind rigid traditions. The older the church, the harder the more rigid. Um, or fear of appearing out of order. That's like very Presbyterian, right? We had to do things in a certain way. Yet the very heart of the incarnation, the Word becoming flesh, reminds us that God shows up authentically in the messy, imperfect, and even uncomfortable realities of life. So come as you are, kind of thing. Come as you are. So I keep asking myself, what if we allowed ourselves to do the same? What if the church embraced authenticity, even if it meant stepping outside the bounds of what feels polished or conventional? I believe this is the kind of vulnerability and courage that the world is longing for, and the kind of authenticity that reflects Christ's light most powerfully. And that's why I truly believe in the work that I want to bring. I don't think the structures that are present are going to be able to offer this rawness because of just because of the conditioning of the existing structures. So thank you so much for believing in this vision. Just hope that the intention translates into good fruit. So as we move forward together, I can't help but think about the light that already shines so brightly here. Parkview is not just a building or an institution. You are the least institutionalized church I have seen, and that's a compliment. Um, this is a living, breathing testament to God's presence in the world. Each of you carries this light, whether it's through acts of kindness, moments of prayer, or the way you show up for one another, for your community, and for this church. So as we step into this new year, my challenge to all of us is this. Let us continue to be a church that shines beyond these walls. Let's not be afraid to show up as we truly are, because that is really valuable. And to meet people where they are, even if it feels messy or unconventional. Let's remind the world that the Word became flesh, not just in Bethlehem, but in every act of love and service and authenticity we undertake today. Friends, the Word became flesh and dwells among us. May we step into this new year as embodied people of the Word, people of light, hope, and transformation. Amen.
Amen.